And why aren't you in uniform? It's about time you got here!
Here you go, Your Majesty.
Ahoy, mateys, and welcome to another episode of I'm Ready, a SpongePod Squarecast. My name is Captain Eric, and we are continuing our sail through the third season of SpongeBob SquarePants. Today's episode is Can You Spare a Dime? It is the second half of the 47th episode of SpongeBob. It first premiered on March 8th, 2002, and it is written by Jay Lender, Sam Henderson, and Meriwether Williams. Our storyboard artist is Caleb Muner. Our storyboard directors are Jay Lender and Sam Henderson. Our animation director is Sean Dempsey, and our creative director is Derek Dryman. First off, I just wanted to thank all of you who had checked out our 100th episode last week and who sent along your kind words through social media. All of the reception for that episode has been absolutely wonderful. If you haven't already, please check it out. It's not based on a SpongeBob episode. It's just a time for us to just kind of talk about other parts of life and celebrate the life of Steven Hillenburg, to shout out some charities and organizations that were close to both me and to those I feel are close to the show as well. So definitely check out that episode. And yeah, we're going to continue on our sail through the third season. We're not stopping there just because we hit 100. We're not stopping anytime soon. Unless I just truly get bored of talking about SpongeBob SquarePants, I don't really see this ship stopping at any port anytime soon, unless we are at the final episode of SpongeBob. Then it's a time to reconsider what we're doing. But we're not anywhere there soon, so let's continue on. Third season, Can You Spare a Dime? A play on words of a classic Bing Crosby song from 1930. The title, Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? Now, in thought, if you're going to ask somebody for a change, like can you spare a dime, the idea is that you're not going to get anything back for that. If somebody asks you for a dime, when have you ever given that up and then ever asked your friend or family member or even somebody in public, like, hey, can I get that dime back? Or have you ever, I'm sure there's been people out there who have held a dime up on a friend or a family member, like, you still owe me that 10 cents. I'm sure that has happened. I am sure there have been arguments over petty change like that. But that's kind of the implication, is like you're just kind of giving something up for nothing, and we get a lot of that in this episode. It actually covers a great deal. And if you have dealt with somebody who might be considered a moocher or a freeloader in your life, then this episode might be funny, but also might bring up some PTSD if you have that over those kind of situations. I can tell you that when you deal with a friend or a family member who may be taking advantage of you a little bit longer than you anticipated, or even at all, it can make for a stressful moment. Like, those times are kind of intense because unfortunately people are all wired differently, all have different expectations on what's right, what's not right. And usually, unless you're like completely open and have really long conversations about what annoys you and what doesn't, sometimes people overstep lines constantly, and without that like communication can just cause big rifts between people. And we do get a bit of that in this episode, but it starts innocently enough at the closing of the Krusty Krab. It is clearly right after they just closed the restaurant. Mr. Krabs is counting the register, which if you're a manager, that's like one of the first things you do once you close the store is, hey, you're going to count the money in the register. SpongeBob is busy mopping, which once again is a job you do right when you close down, of course, a restaurant or any store. If you can mop, you want to clean those floors up. But Squidward, for some reason, is just standing off counting his tentacles. It's this little sequence where each character is counting something, and at the end of that sequence, Squidward just asks if he can go home, to which SpongeBob comes in, knowing the Krusty Krab work manual, the employee manual, inside and out to the subsection. Like, apparently SpongeBob can recite the entire Krusty Krab manual front and back and knows every little nook and cranny, and there's been like second revisions of this employee manual, and Mr. Krabs seems to just put literally cover every base with this manual of questioning. There's not it doesn't seem like, at least from the information we get, which SpongeBob comes in to let Squidward know that all employees have to stay until the last register is counted, the last receipt has been found. Which actually, look, as someone who has been in many manager positions, counting registers and tills at the end of the night is a common practice right when you close, and it is also common for employees not to leave until that process is done, or usually while you're doing that, there's other things in the store, depending on where you're working, that need to be done in that closing time. So there, yeah, in some cases, if somebody obviously has something to attend, a dinner, or hey, I'm going to a movie. If somebody asks for if they could leave right at closing, like, yeah, sure. It's not usually a big deal, but for Mr. Krabs, it's a big deal that everybody stays until everything is done and ready to go. Now everything seems kosher. We're good to go. All the money seems to be accounted for, except that Mr. Krabs cannot find his very first dime in the register. Now, my first question to Mr. Krabs in this moment is, if this dime is so important that you're literally going to ruin the relationships of your employees and your friends, like, over this dime, is this important for you? Why is it constantly in the register? Shouldn't you keep that in your safe? Shouldn't you keep that in your office somewhere, if in your desk? I don't know. It just seems like an odd place to keep this special dime, and not spoiling anything, but certainly not a place you'd want to keep that thing. But Mr. Krabs cannot find his first dime, and immediately he goes from like 0 to 10 on Squidward being the one at the register, and that Squidward must have stolen it. Like, he's not going through the natural processes that anybody would if they've misplaced something. He immediately just attacks Squidward at the thought that Squidward must have stole his dime, which, once again, I mean, it is a dime's a dime. Now, obviously, no one should be taking money out of your register. If you work somewhere, I mean, taking a penny out of a register and putting it in your pocket, yes, at the end of the day, it's a penny, but that's not your penny. Like, that's the company's penny. Don't touch that. So even if Squidward was, pocketing a dime and you don't find that as a big deal, or worth getting that angry over, I mean, where's your line? What amount of currency could somebody take out of a register before you go, hey, don't do that? I would say penny. Don't even take a penny. It's not worth it. You're working, you're making money to be able to buy things. Stealing from your job is never a smart thing. Don't steal from the register. Don't steal from the inside of your store. Don't do any of that. It's just not worth it. Save your money and buy stuff. And if you really need a dime, don't just steal it from the register. You can find a dime on the floor. But Mr. Krabs immediately accuses Squidward of misplacing this dime, stealing it. Like, if it's not in the register and I can't find it, then you 100% must have stolen it. Now, obviously, to blame any character for stealing from the register, Squidward would be the first one, because he is at the register all day. But yeah, it's incredibly silly for Mr. Krabs to immediately go after Squidward this intensely. I have had that happen once in my life before. There has been one time where I was accused of stealing from a store I worked at, and it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever come across. It's one of my favorite stories to tell people, so I might as well tell it here for the podcast. But at one point in my life, I was an employee of Rite Aid, a chain of pharmacies here in North America. I believe at this point now they have been bought up by Walgreens, and just kind of all of them have been converted. I don't know if there still exists some Rite Aids out there that are like being converted to Walgreens at some point. But yeah, at one point in time, I worked at Rite Aid. I was a cashier, a trainer, was never really keyed, but I had a nice position at this store, and I did my job well. There were parts of it I obviously didn't enjoy, but for the most part, I enjoyed the job. Now, the LP manager for our area, which for those that don't know, LP stands for loss prevention. And in stores, those who work for loss prevention are there to prevent loss. It's kind of in their description there. Well, what does that mean? They're there to stop people, to stop obviously stealing from outside sources, and also from theft and stealing from inside sources, people who steal inside and out. Like, they're there to prevent the product to go missing from a store. Now, I had a wonderful correspondence with our LP manager. She was a very nice woman who, anytime she visited our store, like, there was nothing but, wonderful things to say. She was a great woman to have around. I just remember always being happy when she showed up. But there was one time that I was not happy that she showed up. And on this occurrence had brought me into our office and had sat me down and essentially accused me of stealing a shaving kit, like a big, expensive shaving kit that had gone missing in our store. Now, for those who have ever seen pictures or videos of me, should know that I pretty much have a beard in almost everything. And I've had a beard since I could have grown one, and I've always kept it fairly, trimmed and maintained, and knew when the right times were to shave to help grow that thing out. And I have a nice beard. I enjoy having facial hair. I don't really look that good without it. But so I'm sitting here with a full beard, with somebody accusing me pretty intensely, like almost as intensely as Mr. Krabs here, like as if it was a definite thing that had occurred. And here I am with a full, beard, and I'm being accused of stealing a shaving kit, like a facial shaving kit, like one of those big, definitely like a chargeable, face shaver, something. I don't know how much it was, but it definitely was a pretty expensive piece and had gone missing. And after she was done kind of speaking and saying her piece, which I don't even remember, other than the fact that, like, maybe I worked on the day they couldn't find it. But when she was done speaking and she's, do you have anything to say for yourself? And I like, it was the most shocked I almost had ever been in my life, because it was just, I couldn't, even right now, I'm having trouble coming up with the words of, like, ma'am, I have a beard. I'm not shaved, I don't shave this. I haven't shaved this off in years. And her response to me was, it looks a lot thinner than the last time I saw you, implying as if I used the kit. And I was like, well, and this is pretty much true to this day, unless I'm taking my beard down, in big sizes. But I was like, I use scissors to trim this thing. I don't buy anything really expensive. Even when I do decide to shave, or when I have the razors for trimming it up, they're single-use shavers. I don't spend that much to maintain this. So I apologized to her, like, I'm sorry that this thing is missing, but I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the person you're looking for if you firmly believe that this thing was stolen. Funny end to this story, like, she still, even after I said my piece, she left that meeting as if, like, I 110% had stolen this thing. And funny story was, I believe, like 3 days later, when there was like a massive, we were like redoing the back room, re-cleaning things, moving shelves, boom, there's the shaving kit. It was in our back room, like the exact same one that we were looking for. Remember, my manager found it. And I'm like, you immediately message that manager and tell her that you found that in the back, and that, like, I was upset about that. And our relationship at that point, I think I had saw her maybe 1 or 2 times afterwards. It was never the same. Like, she was just never as cheerful towards me. I don't know if she felt embarrassed over it, or if she was just still angry about it, because I'm telling you guys, like, I have never, it literally, when you watch this episode and you see how intensely Mr. Krabs went after Squidward and acted as if, like, he knew that it had to be fact, that was pretty much the same intensity, not of on a cartoon level, but as intense as an LP manager could be towards an employee, with like zero evidence. Like I said, other than the fact, I think that I had just worked on the day where we just said, hey, we can't find this thing. I don't think it's in the store anymore, and shrunk it out. But yeah, that's, so I've been in Squidward's position before. I have, and Squidward really, so when he gets back to SpongeBob, when Squidward gets accused of stealing this dime, he of course didn't steal a dime, and says his piece, like, I didn't steal anything. And for as intense as Mr. Krabs was towards him, Squidward, of course, feels very disrespected in this situation, and completely just up and quits his job at the Krusty Krab. And for that, I say rightfully so. If you work at a location and, we know that Squidward is not the best employee at the Krusty Krab. But he is a long-standing employee who, as far as I know, doesn't constantly call out. He comes in, he does his job, and even if he has a frown on his face, and is a bit of a grump towards customers, he's there and doing it. He's there to just accept, take people's orders, accept money, and get them their food. I know people love exceptional customer service, but like to walk in and expect exceptional is one thing. Like you should go in and at least know, all right, bare minimum, I'm going to pay money for something and I'm going to get something. If the employees, obviously, if they're like making your trip worse than it is, I can understand that. But if an employee, just because they might not have a smile on their face and they might not be like extraordinarily cheerful, hey, look, if they're doing the job, just move on with your day. Just like you got your stuff, move on. I don't think Squidward is that bad in the position, especially when dealing with like the restaurant like business. It can be crazy. Obviously, don't be a Squidward. Try to be a bit more of a SpongeBob. Just like have personal pride in what you do. But hey, look, it's the Krusty Krab. It's not it's a career for these guys, but for some people, fast food places like that is not a career. You're there just for a certain amount of time, but hey, you should have pride in what you're doing, and that may help set you up for the future. It's all about who you know out there. But yeah, Squidward stands up for himself and quits the Krusty Krab. It is not going to take this abuse from Mr. Krabs, rightfully so. I stand with Squidward in this, and I think it's one of Squidward's best moments, honestly. It's a moment in which he was put in a crummy situation, as he usually is, but he took the reins of this situation and made a decision for himself instead of the decision happening for him. So I really like seeing Squidward right here. Now he quits, and SpongeBob runs after Squidward, of course doesn't want him to quit. But it's funny because the conversation they have leaving the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob is talking to Squidward as if they're not neighbors and they're basically work buddies. Now, if you have been in the workforce for a while, you know what like a work friend is. It's somebody that like when you're together at work, you gel with extremely well. Which is great because having a good work friend can help ease a lot of stress from the job. But a work friend, you might hang out with them, a few times outside of work. But once you stop working with one another, things kind of die down. That doesn't mean that you didn't appreciate your friendship, but it's just like, you move on. You're always going to have those friends at a job that once one of you were not working there, the communication just becomes minimal, if at best. Sometimes you just never talk to people again. But you got to appreciate those people that you worked with. In those moments, sure, maybe you didn't continue a friendship for years beyond, but you came together and you were helping each other get through a job. So rock on, all work friends, past, present, and future. But yeah, the conversation they're having is if they're not neighbors. SpongeBob is like, I'm never gonna see Squidward again. That's the way he's coming across, and Squidward is acting as if just because he's quitting the Krusty Krab, he's immediately moving out of his house. I mean, if I was SpongeBob, I'd like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, you're not gonna be working here, but you're gonna be at home. But for comedically for this episode, I think it works. It's incredibly funny how they're coming across here in this situation. But yeah, Squidward has a really good level of confidence for himself here that he can do anything in the world that he puts his mind to. And I like that he says that. SpongeBob, though, gives him a little bit, he's a good friend. He gives him a little bit of a confidence boost, and also to let him know, hey, if you ever need, you need me for anything, if you need a place to go, I'll be here. It's the kind of things I would say to people I truly care about, like the close friends I have, the people who, hey, if you ever need anything, just give me a call, give me a text. I'm there for you if I can. I get that. And SpongeBob is being a really good friend here. What immediately happens, though, is we get I don't want to say massive time jump, but we get this very quick comedic time jump where Squidward says essentially that he'll have Bikini Bottom eating out of his hand in no time, or it just in no time he's going to be incredibly successful. The scene immediately transitions to Squidward, very clearly homeless, living outside of a cardboard box, tattered clothes, 5 o'clock shadow, begging for change on the streets of Bikini Bottom. It is very sudden. We don't know how much time has passed, but we can guess it's been a while, because when SpongeBob comes across Squidward, almost immediately inside this box, their conversation, it's so funny, because it's as if it's been years. Like if you haven't seen somebody in 10 years and then you find them again homeless on the street, and SpongeBob's like, "Hey, it's me. We used to work together. Remember?" Like that. The last few minutes of this sequence, the fact that their conversation outside of the Krusty Krab transitioning to this and then this conversation is just so funny that they just ignored the fact that these guys are neighbors and they have all this history with one another, and then all these years have passed on, and I comedically I love how they got to this level. Now SpongeBob is oblivious to what we all see when we see Squidward in that moment. Homelessness is not a joke. There are people out there who, even those who may be listening to this show, who are in rough situations and may not find themselves in a place that they can call a home. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there when it comes to the homeless and just homelessness as a concept. The best that I can say, because I'm certainly no expert on it, and certainly even with all I've soaked in as far as information is concerned, can admit that I will still have more to learn out there. But I can say that whatever you think you know about just the homeless, or the ideas, or how they get there, or the situations people may be put in, you don't know. Like, I still hear things to this day that shock me and change my understanding. And even if you're older than I am, there's just so much in this world to still learn. And yeah, the homeless part of Squidward here, they wrote it in fine. Like, none of this was a joke, but I'm just saying in general, you don't know, it's not funny. Like, it just isn't. But it's a great vehicle here to just have. Squidward is so down on his luck. The one joke that does come in here, though, is that he is so down on his luck that even the cardboard box he is residing in pretty much gets repossessed. We don't see how Squidward loses all of his stuff, but without a job, without making income, there are a lot of ways you can find yourself in this situation with Squidward. Now, from what we know, he doesn't outright own his house. He must have a mortgage on it he's paying, because then if he can't pay that mortgage, the bank takes it back over. That's how he easily loses his Tiki Island home. So that might give us some context as far as Squidward's ownership of that house. But so we have Squidward here now, boxless, completely living on the street, and SpongeBob oblivious to it, which is really sweet for his character. That even as how Squidward looks on the street and seeing him in this current moment, is oblivious to the fact that he is homeless, is still thinking oh, you're a football player because you're stinky and your clothes are ripped. It's just another endearing part of the character. Now, once Squidward comes to terms and admits to SpongeBob, that he uses the term loser, and self-deprecation can obviously be a useful tool when in suffering. But if you find yourself in a situation like this, never at any point should you be considering yourself a loser, unless you purposely put yourself there. Then yeah, that's maybe something you can use. But I don't know. I felt bad for Squidward in this situation, because it's not like he was fired and then found himself in the streets. I know he made the decision to quit, but I thought he made the right decision there. So I just feel bad he wasn't able to find more work, or, seeing how lazy he is in this episode later on, who knows how much he was really looking for work after quitting the Krusty Krab. He may have just decided to be extremely lazy, try to be a stay-at-home artist. Not that that's lazy, because as long as he's working on art, but Yeah, clearly, like looking for jobs is not something Squidward does. That's fact. So I don't know if after quitting he was immediately looking to get back into the workforce. But yeah, SpongeBob sees and finally admits that, okay, Squidward is down on his luck. He finds himself in this rough situation. SpongeBob does the good friend deed of taking Squidward into his home, at least for a small amount of time to get him back up on his feet. Which, hey, if you're a good person and even if you don't have the space, helping a friend, something you'd probably do if somebody is that close with you. Now, SpongeBob is so nice that it's not like he's letting Squidward stay on his couch. He's giving up his bed for Squidward to stay in and taking the couch himself, which is just a good host. I'm not saying that he would be wrong having Squidward stay on the couch. I mean, look, if beggars can't be choosers, if you're out on the street and somebody offers you to stay on their couch, you're like, first question shouldn't be like, well, why not a bed? Like, no, you just take the couch. It's better than on the ground. It's better than in a cardboard box. So, but like SpongeBob goes that extra mile of being a friend to make sure that Squidward has that extra level of comfort. But of course, this all leads to his own issue and his own detriment. Now, SpongeBob tries to tell Squidward earlier when he quits that life, basically, no one is going to serve you happiness on a silver platter. SpongeBob tries to be real about the world. And hey, there are those out there that, if you are born in a certain situation, yeah, life does kind of hand you happiness on a silver platter. Well, not happiness. Happiness is subjective. It's not all about money or wealth. But I don't even mean being born in a situation where it's just inherently wealthy. You might just be born in a situation that might lead to just easier happiness than others. But yeah, no one is going to serve you happiness. Happiness is sublime. You got to find it yourself because it's not a person or a thing or a place or money. It could be anything. If anything can make you happy, it's just a feeling. But yeah, no one's going to serve you happiness on a silver platter. The joke then being that somebody immediately shows up to SpongeBob with a platter of cookies, freely gives him one, and then just forgets Squidward. But here's SpongeBob like serving up all this love and attention to Squidward on a silver platter. We get a montage of the amount of pampering and babying that SpongeBob is doing to Squidward. Now, that sounds harsh, but here's the thing. For a bit of it, I do think SpongeBob is doing a really good deed because I think when somebody is down on their luck like that, and just saying from personal experience, when you feel down, your confidence goes down, and people might say like obvious things you can do to fix your position, but sometimes if that confidence isn't built, it's tough moving forward and trying to get back. I think especially when you're find yourself in Squidward's situation, he definitely, it feels super appreciative of SpongeBob at first, and it's very clear that we're dealing with a less confident Squidward than the last time we saw him. So I think SpongeBob is doing a great job in helping Squidward rebuild his confidence a little bit, to get him back up on his feet, to get him back out in the workforce. But there's a moment in this montage that I think exemplifies the wrong side of the situation, in that SpongeBob has a bottle for Squidward and is basically bottle feeding him milk, I'm guessing. He's babying him. And this is the you can like help somebody gain their confidence back and help them out to a certain point, but I think SpongeBob crossed that line and went into full-on mother mode, took care of him to an extreme, and helped create this monster that he now finds on himself. Now we follow after that montage. We find ourselves in a situation where you have now let someone overstay their welcome, and maybe the careful deeds they were doing at first when they were living with you or whatnot then stop happening, and maybe they take a little bit more advantage here and there, and it just causes a mess. I don't think people are ever truly fully aware of everything they do, because I just think what happens in these situations is, Like in Squidward's situation, for SpongeBob, who's constantly pampering him and babying him, and it's like a all you can do spa at SpongeBob's house where you don't even have to get out of bed. You can just call him and to do anything you want, hand over foot. Not one point did SpongeBob ever say to him, "Hey, this is a little bit too much." He keeps quiet. He keeps telling Gary, even though Gary points out that Squidward is a bit of a freeloader, that he's a moocher. SpongeBob is still just keeping quiet, keeping to himself, and just like, I just want to make this guy happy. He wants to be a good friend, and he doesn't want to ruffle feathers. He doesn't want to get angry about it. But as we can see, when you don't say anything for a while, it just grows out of control and becomes a bigger issue. I love the nighttime scene with the stairs and light joke of SpongeBob having to begrudgingly go back up and down his stairs to bring Squidward water and to shut the light off, and eventually we get SpongeBob falling down the stairs. Like, that whole bit I absolutely love. It feels like almost like a classic Looney Tunes style bit, and I just absolutely adore those kind of jokes. We get another joke here where the amount of time that it has been with SpongeBob and Squidward living with one another goes so long through those our classic narrator time cards that we get a new narrator because the old one got so sick of waiting for Squidward to get up off of his feet that he quit the job, and we get this new narrator voiced by D. Bradley Baker, which it like that whole sequence right there, the narrator quitting and being replaced, one of my favorite SpongeBob bits. I maybe even top 10 jokes. I don't know. That's actually a good list to make, like my top jokes of SpongeBob SquarePants. That would fit up there. I always loved that. We now get, after this new narrator has taken over, we now find ourselves in a situation where Squidward is a monster. He's not only fully taking advantage of SpongeBob and his kindness, but he's full on demanding SpongeBob to do literally everything. To wear a specific uniform, which, why aren't you in uniform? Like, how many adults in the room watching this sequence just who had never watched this episode before just died when they saw SpongeBob walk back in a maid outfit? Another grand slam of a joke here. I absolutely love it. The fact that he's in underwear too when we see the back it's just a gold moment that they could get on a children's show here. But yeah, we get Squidward demanding SpongeBob dressing up as a maid, bringing him soup, bringing him a television. Like, he's demanding so much of this guy and is just so cranky and angry. And this is when you, like, if you have been in this situation, this is where that PTSD might kick back in. Like, if you know exactly what's going on and how Squidward is acting and how SpongeBob is being treated here. SpongeBob, though, has reached his boiling point with old Squidward and is now laying it on heavy with a lot of words and situations that it is time for Squidward to look for a job. He tries handing him the newspaper, in which we find out that Squidward apparently is allergic to newsprint, which is extremely funny because if you think about that for a second, newsprint is ink, which we see Squidward produce in future episodes. Like, the fact that he says he's allergic to ink is hilarious. We get SpongeBob putting together a puppet show on the television instead of Squidward's stories that he requested, in which two puppets discuss how cool it is to have a job and how it's really awesome to not mooch off of your friends. The fact that Squidward watches this puppet show for the amount of time he does that made me laugh again this time, because he eventually, like, after the entire show is done, he's like, "This isn't my stories," and gets really angry. But the fact that he watched that whole sequence, which was SpongeBob, putting on the puppet show inside of the television, very much aimed at Squidward. The fact that he just sat there and watched that thing. How many of you with cable have ever put on the television, saw something that you weren't intending to watch, and stayed there as long as Squidward would? I would immediately have turned the channel. The fact that he stayed there and listened to it for a little bit made me laugh. Now, at this point with SpongeBob, he doesn't even try after the puppet show to hide the fact that he is telling Squidward to get a job. It's one of my favorite. There's a lot of favorites in this episode, but it's one of my favorite, like, SpongeBob anger moments is when he is on top of Squidward on the bed, screaming at him and overemphasizing every time he says the word job and like pressing his nose. He like wants to get Squidward out of bed, out of his house, out of his life of currently this situation. Once Squidward clearly doesn't even get that message of being screamed at job over and over, SpongeBob grabs his bed, brings it over the Krusty Krab, and demands that Mr. Krabs gives Squidward his job back. He also throws a bunch of dimes at Mr. Krabs to replace the missing dime that Mr. Krabs continually thought Squidward stole. While it's funny because he inspects the dime that SpongeBob gives to him, and it turns out that it's not anything like his first dime, and SpongeBob throws more dimes at him, and it's one of our like first times ever seeing Mr. Krabs turn down money. We've seen this guy do and say the craziest things for even a penny, and so just see him like turn away all these dimes is actually it's really funny and shows off like how much he loved obviously this first time. But then when we get the realization after SpongeBob shakes Mr. Krabs furiously in the air and calls him a crustaceous cheapskate for the second time in the show thus far, the dime that was missing out of the register falls out of the pocket of Mr. Krabs and breaks the floor of the Krusty Krab. It is in fact a rye stone dime. Well, rye stones don't really have currency value to them as far as like a dime being 10 cents. But what a rye stone is one of many large artifacts that were manufactured and treasured by the native inhabitants of the Yap Islands in Micronesia. These are also known as Yapese stone money. And these things can even be like the picture of what I'm looking at is 8 feet in height. And it's just this massive stone circle looking exactly like the one that Mr. Krabs drops out of his pocket, or it has some markings on it and it looks like a wheel. But we get this comically large old rye stone that is apparently Mr. Krabs' first dime. He has been in business a long time. And it's just, like comedically, you couldn't go any better with if you had to eventually show off what this dime was. The fact that it was in his pocket this whole time and it's this massive large stone, the fact that he holds that large stone in the register and then assumed Squidward stole it, just everything about it is hilarious. What we get now is, of course, Squidward gets to have his job back because Mr. Krabs comes to the realization that, well, he has his dime back, so that's all that matters. But he then accuses Squidward of not just stealing the dime, but stealing it and then putting it back in his pocket when he wasn't looking. And the end of the episode has the two re-engaging in an argument while SpongeBob re-puts on his maid gear as if Squidward is going to have to move back in with him. But that's the end of the episode. We don't get a really final conclusion here about Mr. Krabs and his like obsession with thinking that Squidward had stolen something. But like even sticking with his ways, like the fact that it was in his pocket, he just couldn't admit that it was in his pocket the entire time. He had to stay stoic and continually blame Squidward. And that is Can You Spare a Dime? An absolutely great SpongeBob Squidward episode. They change up the dynamic here a little bit. And I like it. It works a lot for this episode. It works for the comedy. It's very real if you've been in situations like this. I certainly can know from not from personal experience, but even from secondhand experience. I've seen people take advantage of others like this. And like I said, sometimes it might not even be like a conscious thing. It's just like you constantly just take a little bit more. Yeah, it's a selfish thing inherently, but some people don't do it just fully on purpose with the intention of getting this bad. But yeah, it can be like an eye-opening episode if you've been in this situation. And as far as like helping those who need it, as far as Captain Eric is concerned and how my philosophy is, I'm always willing to help those who need it. But I also firmly believe in the philosophy of Spider-Man from Family Guy and that everybody gets one. Like you get one, and if you're screw me over or if you take more advantage than expected, like don't expect there to be help that second time. But look, always try to have a good moral compass. Help those that you love. That's what we're about here. As a part of the Ready crew, being there for one another, helping each other out. And that is Can You Spare a Dime? Thank you for listening to another episode of the Squarecast. Here's to 100 episodes more, 200 episodes more. Thank you for coming along this ride with me. If you are a new listener, welcome. Being a part of the Ready crew, it costs nothing. I will never ask a dime of you guys for being a part of our family here. That's not what this is about, and it really never will be. I appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you for continually listening. Here's to many more episodes of the Squarecast. And please stay safe out there. Love one another. Be there for one another. Be kind. And if you are someone in Squidward's, kind of situation, and there are those who extend their help, just don't take more than what is offered. Don't be a Squidward. But appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Oh, Dimey! I'll never lose you again!
This is a dime?
I've been in business a long time, boy.